We address today this call and need for civility and the free expression of ideology. We address, in this context, in particular, statements from Congressman Maxine Waters as she has called for the harassment and the persecution of members of the Trump administration. You know, this is a dangerous and an unhinged, really, call. And it signals to liberal activists that violence is a preferred way to demonstrate disagreement. Now, this Congresswoman acts really as a chimney for the real fire of a left-wing anarchy that's attempting to burn the very structures and foundations of our constitutional republic. And in doing so, it shows that there is no longer any pride in the history of our traditions and no credible forecasting for the future growth of this nation. It also demonstrates that this resistance is not progressing at all, but is rather in a standstill, hunched over in a dark corner of bitterness, self-loathing, and now dangerous retaliation. You know, this attitude is sort of like an addiction to chaos, and it can only be met, it can only be remedied with civility, with right-standing people of good moral conscience calling on a moral society to correct this political illness. Harassment and persecution, as mentioned, may work in other communist, totalitarian, or oppressive regimes. It may work well over there, but here we've committed ourselves to a higher standard of public discourse, where it's the ballot and not bullies that speak for the American public, where it is voting and not violence that shapes the direction of our country, where it is discourse and not delinquency that expresses our agreement or our disagreement on an issue. That every man and woman have a right to speak and write and print his or her opinions on any subject whatsoever without prior restraint, so long as they do not injure any other person in their right, person, property, or their reputation. Make no mistake, this attempt at injury, this hostility, is a direct pushback against the success of conservative policies shaping government action at various levels. You know, in many ways, this administration has been the strongest administration on record, the strongest on record as it comes to protecting the sanctity of life, the strongest on record as they have fought to limit government involvement and intrusion in our lives. When issues like religious liberty have risen to the forefront of our political debate, this administration has been 100% accurate in all of their interventions and contributions to this cherished right, including the appointment of judges and justices to our judicial benches who defend this right. In this context, President Trump's Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh, could shape the American legal landscape for decades. As the president noted in his introductory message, Kavanaugh has impeccable academic credentials, expansive professional experience. He is truly a judge's judge. You think about the credentials of this man. Most recently, he has served for 12 years on the bench of the United States Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. He's written over 300 judicial opinions, and the Supreme Court has endorsed his opinions more than a dozen times. His 100 most cited opinions have been used by over 210 other judges, and in his own words, Judge Kavanaugh said that his judicial philosophy, his straightforward approach, is that a judge must be independent and must interpret the law and not make it. Judge Kavanaugh has already committed to interpreting the original text of the Constitution, and he has a stellar career that proves that. He's been the attorney in the Office of the Solicitor General. He's clerked for Justice Anthony Kennedy on the United States Supreme Court. He was associate counsel in the Office of Independent Counsel. He was the associate counsel and then senior associate counsel to the president. He was assistant to the president and staff secretary to the president. He's argued cases before the Supreme Court and other appellate courts. He has taught full-term courses at Harvard Law School, at Yale Law School, at Georgetown University Law Center, and has published articles in all 3 of these schools' journals and in 6 other journals. The White House has said in a statement that Judge Kavanaugh is the best of the best, a man who builds consensus and decides cases based on the law and not his personal preferences. Is this what the left is angry about? Is this what the left convulses over? Is this what you are seeking to stop? We're here to remind you that you may have the right to disagree. Disagree if you may, but civil society's adherence to the principles of the Constitution won't be stopped. We know this truth, and so we'll continue to speak it. We know our hope, and so we'll continue to tell it. We know our goal, and we will reach it. And we will not be silenced. And right now, we have the chance to be heard on this vitally important issue. With the nomination of Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court, President Trump has chosen a man who will be a powerful voice for the Constitution and the founders' vision of a free constitutional government. We have this chance to make our voice heard. And in doing so, we will be upholding the ideals of freedom, this ideal of free speech, this ideal that all people should be able to engage with each other in a reasoned discussion of serious issues and to seek a common understanding. This is what we are championing, and so we will stand up, we will speak out, and we will encourage others and all to do the same. For this is what our great civil society deserves. Nothing lower and nothing less.